Good morning, breakfast clubbers. Ray Engan was a shy little boy who avoided talking to strangers by walking inside the safety of his mom's wraparound skirts. He went on to a career in stand-up comedy, performing with and writing for some of America's best comedians. He began using the skills of connecting through comedy in the business world and became the sales manager of America's most award-winning small business. Ray has testified before a presidential task force and appeared on MSNBC as a voice of small business in America. Now, before COVID, he gives workshops around the country teaching America's business leaders how to create better, happier, more productive workers through humorous storytelling in the workplace with his program, Leadership Through Laughter. Today, he spends part of his day screaming, "Jimmy, unmute yourself." Well, actually, he doesn't. There's a better way to do it than that. He has shifted his focus to making the Zoom experience more fun for working professionals, and he is going to make sure everyone walks away with many different and interesting Zoom fatigue busting and comedy creating tips. If you miss anything, you can always grab at least 15 different Zoom tricks, tools, and techniques at stopzoomfatiguenow.com. So let me introduce Ray Engan, an award-winning motivational speaker, coach, and storyteller.
So my crime spree began like most of them do. I met a older, wiser, street smart pusher who lured me into a gateway drug, and my first taste was free. My crime spree ended with a chocolate-covered mint. I was 4 years old in front of the Brock's candy wall, treats as far as the eye could see, chocolate-covered mints, lovely caramels, those little square nougaty things with the red, yellow, and green jellies in them. Everywhere I could see was joy. My mouth was open, eyes wide, arms extended, fingers akimbo, in full I want mode. My 7-year-old satanic brother slithered up to me with the smile of a used car salesman. "See this, Ray? This is for us. And it's free." His tongue seemed to slither when he spoke. "Go ahead, have one." My little 4-year-old head was filled with goodness. Like, it's not mine. But the devil was ready. "Ray, they want us to have these candies. That's why they're back here. So mom and dad walk through the entire store. They see more products. They buy more things. That's why these are free." My 7-year-old genius marketing brother was making some sense. And then he went for his ace card in the hole. He grabbed a chocolate-covered mint, my favorite, and he pulled, and it rolled open in between. And you could see a little slice of that chocolate underbelly. And he took it and he put it in my hand. And he said, "They don't need this one. It's open." I picked it up. And when it hit my teeth, my brother turned and screamed, "Mom, Ray's stealing candy." She came out of nowhere, ripped it out of my mouth. I didn't even taste chocolate. She grabbed me by the ear and pulled me to the front of the store and demanded that the store manager have me arrested. He gave me probation and house arrest. My mom finally let go of my ear, but she put me in a 28-day candy rehab. On the 29th day, I was standing again in front of the Brock's candy wall, just looking. And I noticed on the ground, there was a $20 bill. And I picked it up. "Mom, look, a $20 bill. Mom, look." She said, "Oh, that's fantastic. You should probably give that to the store manager. There's someone looking for that." I gave it to the store manager, and he said, "If no one claims the bill in 20 days, It's yours. Then he handed me his card. Don't ever give a 5-year-old your card. Do you know how long 20 days is to a 5-year-old? I called him every single day, 10 times a day. He would pick up the phone and say, no, Ray, no one's claimed it yet. But I got that $20 bill. And I remember that day to this day because it made my mom proud. Now, fast forward 25 years. I'm walking into a Sacramento bank to withdraw the final $20 bill that I have in my account. And on the ground, I see a wallet. I pick up the wallet. Inside, there's $1,263 in this wallet. You know what I did, right? Right? No, I looked up and said, thank you. I took the wallet, put it in my pocket, and went into the bank to deposit the money. I figured this was God's way of giving me a gift for being nice all of these years, and it would really help me out. That would have solved all my problems at that time. So I'm standing in line at the bank, the big ropey line at the bank, and I'm looking in the wallet, and that's how I know there's $1,263 in it. And I'm looking through the wallet, and I see pictures of a couple kids, and I'm thinking, wow, this guy's going to have a hard time this month, taking care of these kids without this money. And I found his pay stub for $1,263. And I'm holding onto the wallet. I get to where I'm next in line, about to deposit that money. And I swear to God, when I'm next in line and the banker calls me forward, my left ear started to hurt again. And I walked up to the banker and I handed the wallet and I said, somebody left this outside. There's $1,263 in it. The whole bank started clapping. I've never felt worse in my life. But that moment wasn't created that day. That moment was created because at age 4, my mom cared. And she took, and I noticed it. I observed what she did. And the biggest moment that I got from that is that my mom changed the world for a Sacramento family that she never met 30 years earlier. And I realized that you don't have to be a world leader to change the world. Some people do it one chocolate mint at a time. And right now we're in a position in this world where things are different. This whole little Zoom thing is not going away. And it's not the big differences that make a huge difference. It's the little things that make these things interesting. And I can share my screen, right, Tony? Okay. Hopefully I got the right thing here. Yes, you can. Share. Oh, if anybody, I've got a lot of, I got this whole slide deck in here. If you go to kiwilive.com and enter the event keyword Zoom, you'll get my contact information and also 16 or 22 Zoom tips. I forget which one is in there, but that's out there as well. Also, there we are. Okay, so that is my company. All right. So one of the most annoying things about Zoom is when you have to unmute yourself. Jimmy, unmute yourself. Jimmy, come on, unmute yourself. Well, let's change that around a little bit. I'm going to give you all kinds of little silly things to make yourself easier on Zoom. I created a rule. It's called Rule 13. So instead of saying unmute yourself, Rule 13. Rule 13. I forget sometimes, and when I'm in a meeting, someone yells Rule 13 at me, and I go, oh my God, that's my own rule. I got to follow that right there. And I am a member of Toastmasters, which means I am so sick of jazz hands. So for those of you that are process oriented today, I apologize because I'm not. If you have your closet and is lined up from left to right, from light colors to dark colors, if you have step 1, step 2, step 3, ABC, I am not. I'm the person in the movie that goes squirrel and off I go. I'm very trainable If you see me go off in a squirrel moment, please put in the chat squirrel, and I will come back right to what you are talking about. Now, in the chat, type in, what's the one thing that annoys you the most about Zoom? What's the one thing that stops you from looking like these two people? Where's the chat? Anybody got anything in there? Oh, and pay your dues, darn it. Struggle with lighting issues. Someone who is not muted when there's a speaker speaking, seems detached. People think you can't see them. No hugging on Zoom. I love that. I love that. People not muting themselves when they're watching TV, background noise when not all are muted. I was worried about that because a lot of times there's gardening that gets done at this time of the morning around my place. Perfect. So there's a ton of things that do that. Now, where is that? Okay. So there's a lot of key weapons that you have to make a Zoom meeting more interesting. People get distracted. It's not like you're a live presentation anymore. So you're on TV. So you're fighting the house that people are watching this for your attention. And anything can distract it. Have you ever binge watched a show during COVID and wound up 3 episodes later realizing, oh my God, that's not Baby Yoda, and then having to go back? So it's not like we have absolute attention. You can't walk over to somebody, tap them on the shoulder, or say something to them and snap them out of attention. You have to use the tools that you have, one of which is the chat box. So if Tony is chatting to Craig and they're in this side conversation while the speaker is speaking, if I say, put your favorite meal in the chat box, then all of a sudden the chat box goes crazy and it goes flying up. And now Tony and Craig can't carry on their conversation. They have to, oh, well, we're in the meeting right there. So it's a weapon that you have. People ask me all the time, they think it's just boring presentations that make Zoom exhausting. No, it's not. Stanford researchers have shown that staring at people and looking at their micro expressions is much more exhausting than it is having a conversation where you can look at things. If Tony and I go to coffee, we can talk for 2 hours and probably never look at each other, or very little, but we're present for each other. But on Zoom, this is it. And too much eye contact is kind of creepy, right? It comes back to Yakov Smirnov, the old Russian comedian who said, oh, America is great. In America, you watch TV. In Russia, TV watches you. And it's true. That's part of why this whole problem on Zoom is exhausting. I spend hours and hours and hours a day on Zoom. And unless you spice it up a little bit, it can get exhausting. You can watch TV all day long because it's not watching you back. You can stare at your phone all night because it's not watching you back. We are fighting with the entertainment dollar with our homes. And you have to be able to beat your home or their home in the amount of interest it takes. Now, it's just like in speaking, the devil's in the details. So the more subtle nuance you put into your presentation, be it the sound of your voice, the pace of your voice, the words you use, don't ever tell me what's going on. Don't just say it. If you say the bird was angry, I want you to display it. Make sure that as you go through this, that you have a picture that you're creating for your audience. Now, this is the 16th slide. If I was doing this live, I wouldn't do 16 slides all day long. But because we're on Zoom, you need to change the angle and change the pace and change what you're doing with it. So a boring speaker in person is even more boring on Zoom. And I believe it might be Patricia Fripp that says sameness is the speaker's enemy. I think that's you, Patricia, but I believe it. So you have to create a texture using your voice, your pace, your actions, your words, your expressions. Sameness is your enemy. Also visually, do the words go on the left or do the words go on the right? Well, if you were presenting a PowerPoint, you would stand to the left of the screen so they'd look at you and then the screen, since people's eyes more often move from left to right. But picking that is very, very important for the comfort of your audience. If it's on the wrong side, they don't know why they're a little uncomfortable watching you speak. So here's 5 quick ways that you can make sure that your Zoom meeting is a little bit more effective. There's the co-host. The co-host can be planned or unplanned. I like to plan to have one. If I don't, I will use a co-host that speaks for me and talks for me. Have you ever gone on Zoom and felt really young and vibrant, and then by the time you're off, you've aged like 50 years? You know, that's kind of what happens right here. But this person acts as a co-host all the time for me. He speaks for me, the young me, and what I would do if I was young and vibrant. But that's another change of pace element that you can use to create a difference. I like unplanned hosts. If I was a member of your group, I would have everybody's name. And if you go to online-stopwatch.com, it's $1 a month. I think it's $12. But if you're a teacher or a speaker, it's fantastic because it has name pullers on it. And it has like a fishing pole. It goes into a pond and it grabs out, you know, Pete, boom, Patricia, boom, Elaine. So it's just a fun way to keep things going and keep things moving. Inanimate objects are fantastic as co-hosts. I have a cowbell in front of me that I could use, which would make too much noise, but that's been a co-host for me, and I speak as the cowbell. Your pictures. I've gone on to Facebook and said, I'm hosting a meeting at noon today. Would anybody like to be my co-host? So you can have a co-host and not let them speak, which is a whole nother subject, but I'm just going to fly through things. Now, spotlight celebrations is the next one. People are afraid to be seen on Zoom having something go wrong. If something does go wrong on Zoom, you must recognize it, because if you don't, you've lost your audience. They've distracted. I was speaking in front of a room. In the background, there were hearts pasted on the background. And as I was speaking, I heard one of the hearts behind me fall to the ground. And I knew that everybody was watching that heart fall to the ground. So I had to say something immediate. So I said, my heart sank. And you could see the laughter all on the page right there. Little side note, it's very hard for a comedian to give a presentation and not hear laughter. So what do? You look for laughter. What does laughter look like? This. People throw their heads back. And if I see Craig laugh at something, I will point him out. See, Craig gets that. Look at that. He's laughing. That allows your audience to laugh as well. So you have to give people permission to do things more so now on Zoom. If you have oddities that occur, now what's another oddity that happens all the time? The cat's tail that walks in front, right? A lot of people are embarrassed in a work environment to have a spouse come in or their cat come in. Celebrate it. If you have a meeting, celebrate it. I give awards for the best pet or spouse interruption. You can have scavenger hunts. Go find me something that shows that a child lives in your house. Bring something that puts a smile on your face. One of my favorite ones is I had everybody go into their fridge and find the most expired item in the fridge. And we had a ceremony, an end of life celebration. And mine was a jar of horseradish, that had been there forever. But just these little things that you can do. Don't do them all in every meeting. Pick and choose little things, and your people will start to enjoy it. You'll start to enjoy it. This is put the fun back in dysfunction. Oh, this is more for Toastmasters. I'll make up a word of the day. Toastmasters has a word of the day. I made up a word and everybody started using it because I made it simple. The word was drivet. which is the combination of how far you are away from your goals. What's the strength of your goals, the drive and the rivet between it. And people are like, oh my God, that's a great word. But the bottom point on there is what I talked about with Craig. Train people to laugh. If you see somebody laugh, he gets it. Why don't the rest of you get it? Give people permission to laugh. Very simple things that I won't use today. Breakout rooms. These are things that, these are things that allow you to put people together. So in a room full of 35, or what do we have here? 39 people. It's intimidating, especially for introverts, to see 39 different faces and want to say something to be allowed to speak. In a Zoom world, if you go into a breakout room, now there's 4 instead of 40, and people will feel more comfortable to speak. The number 2 fear is, number 1 is public speaking or fear of embarrassment in public. Number 2 is the fear of walking into a room full of strangers. And people don't know that. And so in a meeting, especially if you've never been to a meeting, the most afraid you are is right at the beginning of the meeting. The least trust you have with the group is right at the beginning of the meeting. And the least trust the group has for you is the same thing. So if you immediately bring people into breakout rooms quickly, they can talk, they can have a little bit more fun. The chat box is another layer. It uses to refocus, lets introverts have a voice. Let me look at the chat and see what's on here now. Love the idea of the scavenger hunt. Stanford University research, F scale, zoom exhaustion fatigue scale. Enemies, yes. Okay. Did a scavenger hunt, the family, a contest, who can find a paper clip first, for example, yet so much fun. It is a lot of fun. It's a blast to do that. I am going to unmute myself here. There is, boom, the humor algorithm, stop Zoom fatigue now. Here's my info, but let me stop sharing. And anybody have questions about this? It's a quick run through of a lot of things that you can do with Zoom, but I'd be happy to have. Craig, you have a question?
I do have a question. Kind of off topic in a little way, but your 7-year-old evil brother, what happened to him?
He doesn't remember that day. And he put his crowning, he put Lux liquid into my water and gave it to me one time, and I drank it and threw up. But yeah, he actually wound up taking all the problems out of the Federal Express package sorting system with his he fixed that software, and that's how Federal Express became a big company. Other questions?
All right.
We get along, by the way. We get along, my brother and I.
Ray, could you tell us a couple of the greatest disasters, or as you look back, hysterically funny now the pain's over, situations in Zoom meetings you've run or been part of?
I saw a full-on husband and wife getting at it, getting into it, screaming match on Zoom. There was about 10 people in this Zoom room, and those 2 were muted. But what I did is I go, and in the lower left-hand corner, in the Jan Brady corner of your Brady Zoom, what you'll see is I'm running a TV show of the Bickersons. So if you can watch that. So I just kind of created that in there. So because everybody was distracted by it. And I remember that one specifically. There's been some great pet interruptions. The dog that licked the camera and wouldn't stop was kind of fun. But the things I remember the most, what I love to do is give me something that touches you or brings a smile to your face. I run a program called the Humor Algorithm. What's that?
That's what Jeffrey Tooman did.
Jeffrey
Tooman.
Oh,
He
okay.
found something. Don't you remember him?
No. Yeah.
He
See
was
in the
caught-
news?
He was caught playing with himself on
Oh,
Zoom meeting.
that guy. Okay. Okay. Yeah. 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 That's not good Zoom,
Oh,
by the way. You know. But the real thing, what you do, there's a program I run called the humor algorithm, and the first day of the class, I have everybody bring something to the meeting that gets them, that makes them smile, not quite in the Tumen way, but human instead of Tumen is the way we're going that there. And what it is, it just allows you to learn a little bit more about someone. So you don't have to say, well, hi, what's your name and what do you do for a living and who are you? So it goes a little deeper than that, which I love.
Who else has a question?
hey, Ray, I have a
Yeah.
question. Do you, when you do the Zoom meetings and everything, there's I guess a fine line, or where you have to figure out how much for you to talk and how much to have the audience participate. And how do you run through that and know when to engage the audience more or less?
There's a couple little tips that you look at, because it's hard. It's different than live, obviously, right? Because you can sense it, you can feel it. You're doing well if you see the numbers of participants going up. If you see them going down, you're not doing well, because it's happened both ways. I spoke to Genentech and had 90 people when I started and 150 when I ended. So they were telling people good things and people were getting on this thing. But I've also, had 50 and wound up with 20 because it didn't click. But I think if you don't change their state every 3 or 4 minutes, you're going to lose them. The poll is another excellent way to do that. And it's research. It's research for you. Usually if I have an hour or so to talk to people, the first thing, there you go. Let's see. Oh, nobody voted. We'll relaunch it. I will ask the audience, what's the one thing, if you could walk out of here today, that would make this whole day worthwhile? And I'll send them off to breakout rooms to do that. Then we come back and I'll have them put it in the chat. I'll have one person represent them in speaking from it. How do I get this poll out of here?
I'll get rid of it.
Okay. So using these different little things, if the meeting needs more cowbell, you ring, boom, there's a cowbell. Obviously this wouldn't work in every single environment. So you have to know your audience. You can't go into IBM and ring a cowbell. Well, you might be able to, I don't know. You have to, my audience is not one that's going to be stuffy and uptight. My clients include like Lagunitas Brewery that has a corporate slogan of beer speaks, people mumble. Okay, so that's kind of my ideal workforce. I also work with a lot of tech leaders that love the ones and zeros of their job, but hate the human interaction that goes with it. So I teach them how to lighten up a little bit, because the numbers on humor in the workplace are unbelievably off the hook. 31% more productivity. Salespeople sell 37% more that are more humorous in their presentation. The benefit of it just is ridiculously high.
I think Elaine has a question.
Yes.
Oh, Ray, I was just going to say, like, if you remember those things we listed out that annoy us about Zoom,
Yeah.
well, how do you handle that at the beginning, or like when it comes up? You have stock lines you like to throw out, or like if people are not muted and they should be, for example?
Well, unmute yourself is rule 13 is usually the first one that comes up. So I said, okay, no more unmute yourself. I want to hear rule 13 every single time I say that. The other things that come up where people aren't muted is if you see that they're not muted, the thing is, who is it? And how do you get to that? Because if you can see one person isn't muted and you hear a dog barking, I would say, Elaine, tell us about your dog. you know, and all of a sudden, oh, you know, click mute, and they go, no, really, Elaine, tell us about your dog. I want to know, I want to meet your dog. Bring it into the screen. So I will turn it into a positive rather than use, if I can, rather than do it a negative. Someone's having a remodel done, I can tell, you know, something, anything like that. Just little things that you hear every single day. It comes up once and it surprises you, maybe. Robin Williams, head writer, wrote a lot of the ad libs that Robin Williams used to make him look like a genius, right? So it may happen once and you say it once, but after that, you can use it again and again and again. That's the beauty about creating humor and being able to write humor, is in your job, it doesn't, once you have something that works, it works forever. And it's not really necessarily a joke per se, but it's laughter on a closing line, or it's laughter on an introduction, that, because human laughter is trust. When you throw your head back, subconsciously you're exposing the most vulnerable area of your body, and you're saying, look, Elaine, you could kill me if you want because I trust you. So laughter builds instant trust. That's why it's so important.
Hey, Ray, I got a question. So,
Yeah.
you know, I run into this frequently because, you know, you get so focused on running a meeting, for example, and kind of moderating things, but then something happens, right? And and you have to just kind of think quickly. I mean, and you've got some great ideas of how to address those things, but I mean, do you just kind of stop and laugh at any given time? Or, I mean, it's like, I find that to be a real great trait of comedians. They can just respond instantly to hecklers or whatever.
It's kind of a way of life. And I started, my father had really good, there's something in humor is a benign violation of a norm that surprises you. Okay. So it can't hurt. So that's why it's benign, and it has to surprise because you can't tickle yourself. So, and what most of it is based upon is a word, phrase, an emotion that, be misinterpreted. That's what happens in most of the human interaction where you laugh. And it's called, what I call it is a two-way option. So a word like housekeeper is a two-way option. You could look at it as somebody who actually tends to the house, or somebody in a divorce who keeps the house, right? That's one of the oldest jokes in the world. But the mine has 5 different meanings. Blast could mean a lot of different things. So you look at, when I speak to you, I hear all the words that you're saying and what they could mean. And what you're really interested in, not the logic of the idea, but the logic of the words. Because that's the easiest way to create surprise. Now, the first thing I would do if I was talking to you, Craig, is say, what the heck is that banana doing up there? Right? So anything that's odd in your background will distract people. So if Craig was given a very powerful presentation, I'd be sitting here thinking, what the hell's that banana for? When's he going to talk about the banana? You know, why is there a banana there? Dang.
Well, I had to pick this background because I had to be respectful of my audience, which is part of it.
and people will read the books in your background if they can do that. They'll wonder about little things that are up there. So
yeah, I don't know if anyone noticed or not, but this is Sydney Mobile in this little picture here. So I even have Sydney in my background.
Nice work.
All right.
I have a question.
Please, Betty.
Well, 4 questions now. How did you get the banana on a screen like that? I don't need the answer. Okay. So, Ray, excellent presentation. You gave a definition of humor and I didn't get it all down. Could you repeat it? It's a benign something and then I lost it.
Benign violation of a norm that surprises you.
Okay.
And that's from the Humor Research Lab in Colorado, or HURL is their name. And if you Google HURL and TED Talk, there's a TED Talk that has that in there as well. So it's a benign violation of a norm that surprises you. In business, I call it safe surprise.
Okay.
Because you're not necessarily going for laughter in business, but you want people to smile.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then two quick things.
Sure.
I have been told that it's much better to not just focus at the screen, but for your eyes, but to look out at the distance. So I'm fortunate that I can look out at the water and so I'm most of the time looking at the view, not looking at the screen. So that was one thing I've learned. And is that true? And then the second thing is, as a presenter, how do you feel when all you see are names or pictures and not the real person reacting?
I heard someone calling in with the answer to that question. That was great. You know, that's an example, Craig, right there. So, how do you deal with that? It is tough. It is tough. You try and look for human interaction. A lot of times you can't really leave it unmuted because people cough and people do all kinds of things. But you look for the interested faces. It's just like a live show. If this was a live show and I was dying and there's one person having a good time, I'm focusing on that one person. I'm going to give them the show of their life, right? So you look for faces. There's usually a couple in there, but I've been in places where it's all dark. And what I kind of do is I just kind of go back to my little happy place of presenting live. And I figure, okay, I'm killing it today. I must be killing it because and I look at that number. I look at that participant number. You know, if it fluctuates greatly, it's like, oops, there it is. You know, I'm not doing my job, but a lot of times it goes up, which is great. So you pick out your own little victories on Zoom. You're not going to, it's not like doing it live, but it's what we have. And this isn't going away. How'd everybody like the commute today? You know, you got your own coffee made the way you want. You got your own food the way you want. You might have had to make it, but you can, you know, if I looked at the lower half of most of you, would it be a pleasant experience as far as the clothing's concerned? Or am I going to see a lot of choners sitting out there? So there's some good things to it. But there's also, from a presenter standpoint, it as someone that uses humor quite a bit, it's tough, but you gotta make your own your own vision in your head. I've learned timing, so I don't worry about it. I know when to pause for things. Sometimes I still talk too quickly. I do a lot of I'm a fast talker normally, but if things I presented before, I know when to pause and where the laughs are.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, Ray and I did not plan our wardrobes. We did not decide to have matching shirts today.
Yeah, don't lie.
Thank you, Ray.
Hey, speaking of unusual things, I see Joel's got like Elmo in his visual.
He wanted to come in after he heard the speaker.
Hey, you know, Ray, I've got more of an observation. I think it's great to share with the group because, you know, being in your shoes and in my shoes at times, like moderating a group, you know, you do really appreciate, you know, having some feedback from the audience. And when people kind of click out and they, you know, they may be getting a cup of coffee or whatever, multitasking. But I think, you know, it's part from my observation. It's just, I think it's really important for me to be present when I'm in a presentation, you know, try and, you know, really focus on it and, you know, and also have the camera live because that's important for the speaker. It's really respectful to the speaker to do that because then they can read you as opposed to just, you know, checking out. So, you know, I think that's just a wonderful gift to share with the audience as well, because it's allowing us to be better participants in any meeting that we're participating in right now.
And just to add another little extra tip on there is that it's okay for people to turn their video off, but if you're the presenter and doing a long presentation, I would plan for that. And I would say, okay, for the next minute and a half, everybody turn your video off and do that thing that you've been dying to do for the last 25 minutes. Okay. And so, because you can't lie back on your couch, you can't, you know, people will pick certain places of their body, whatever it is, give them the freedom to be free during the call, and they won't back away from you. They'll follow you more. So I have that's another one of the tips that's on the list at the Haiku Live is to give people planned breaks.
Great.
I wanted to compliment you on your opening, the dialogue. This is something I've learned
prep too, that the dialogue between you as 4-year-old and your 7-year-old brother, that's a great technique to add some interest.
Thanks. And one of the little tips on Zoom that you can do, because having a conversation and dialogue, the person who's speaking should never look at the camera, right? Well, where do you look? Well, if you put little Post-it notes, mom, me, my brother, it tells you where to look. It's a lot that way. It's a lot easier in a Zoom room than it is live, because I have to remember who's who, you know.
I like the whole opening statement. My crime spree began. That was just, I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, people look at you differently when you say that. Yeah.
Another better point about planned ad libs. This is something we can all do. You plan ahead what you're going to say. And by the way, a lot of speakers probably think this is something new, but Will Rogers did that more than 100 years ago during his vaudeville days.
Yeah.
What he would say if the rope trick didn't work right, for example.
Well, I have a friend named Cody Catula that I used to tour with, and he was opening, I forget where the heck we were, but it was somewhere down south. And I don't remember what his joke was, but his closing joke, the punchline was, and I don't think I do very well in prison. You know, he's a nice looking guy. And it was kind of a funny joke. It was his closing line. But one night he said, I don't think I do very well in prison. This guy must have weighed 400 pounds, was sitting in the front row, looked up at him and said, oh, you do fine. So he changed the joke to include that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So sometimes the audience writes it for you.
That's brilliant. Patricia?
Jerry Lewis said, my best ad libs take 8 hours to write.
Yeah.
Yep. And Seinfeld will tell you that if it takes 3 hours to whittle something from 8 words down to 5, it was worth it.
Yeah.
Linda, I see you're on the call. Nice to see you. As a public speaker, what's your take on this? Because you must run into this all the time in your presentations.
Yeah, the first time I saw somebody smoking on a Zoom meeting was really, especially living here in California where we don't see that as often. It was like, wow, okay, but they're in New Zealand and this is, you know, it's like, okay, that's what they're doing.
I have not seen that yet.
Yeah, it was like, okay, mark for something interesting that happened on Zoom. I didn't comment on it because of the, you know, it was like, okay. But that's actually a question, Ray. Do you always call out something that's unusual, or do sometimes you just let it go? Because I find that, you know, sometimes the cat walking by, you know, it's like I don't need to mention it every time because it happens.
It depends. You know, it depends on the pace of the meeting and what's going on. I had a guy fall asleep one time, and we sent him like texts and chats and things like that, and you know, tell him what he did in his sleep, you know, and we did all this kind of stuff right there. So he never came tired to a meeting again. But I have a tendency to mention things because here's the reality of it is, if something distracts you, the audience is going with it. And then what you have is an audience that is watching TV. Oh my God, you know, SWAT is on, you know, and oh wait, I was in this meeting. And so if you don't mention it, you might as well, because you're going to lose them anyway. It's not live where I can, you know, if you have the troubled chatty people, you can stand next to them and talk and they stop talking, or you can just walk up near them and they'll immediately do that, or ask them a question, they stop. Well, on Zoom, it's not that easy. You've got to, in action, it's a blessing to the speaker on Zoom to have that, I believe, because it keeps you on your toes. It keeps you interested and interesting, and it tests your little improv chops to give it a little yes and see where you can go with it.
Yeah, I was just say something.
Yeah,
Susan?
When I had my big 75th birthday, Paul Griffin, who works with Patricia, was the moderator. And what you just said, my brother and sister-in-law decided to have a conversation with like 45 of my people on the East Coast. And Paul muted them. The beauty was I could say to my brother, you know, Paul wanted me to let you know that he felt bad he had to mute you, but because you were talking. So I had no guilt and I had nothing, but I needed to let them know that they misbehaved and I could blame it on Paul. But it was great. And it goes what Patricia said, have a moderator and someone who is the bad guy. And then you can apologize, but let them know that they need to change their behavior the next time.
Yep. Moderator, co-host, you got to have somebody else there. When you speak, like you can't check the chat while you speak. You can't. So somebody else has to do that for you. It gives you somebody to go back and forth with. I did this presentation for a Toastmasters district on the weekend, and I'd never met Trina. And I said, you know, I was talking about having a co-host, and I said, guess what, Trina, you're my co-host now. And I made her speak to the group. And if they start speaking, I said, I didn't say host, I said co-host, you know, and you bring them back down to where they are. So.
Hey, Bob, what's any experiences on your end with your chat?
No, but I like the idea of the co-host because in my show, I am the moderator. I make the speaker the presenter, and I'm always monitoring the chat forum. And if stuff comes up, I'm the one that kind of like comes in and says, "Hey, look at your cat." Back to Linda.
Well, and the greatest, if you go on podcasts and have the greatest moderators are the ones that bring up your cool talking points. You know, I heard you once said this, Ray. Oh yeah, I did. You know, boom, 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 boom.
Also, if the presenter asks for questions and nobody says anything, you have to be on the ball to ask the question that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's so true because nobody wants to break the seal on questions.
Yes.
And one of the problems with having like brainstorming sessions on Zoom or in an office is you get the best ideas from the loudest people. You don't get everybody. See, right now my brain is so active I can hear like 3 or 4 voices in my head. Right? See, that would be the stock line that Elaine was asking about earlier.
Yeah, the only problem is that that's not Zoom.
I know.
That's just life as Ray.
This is such a fascinating topic, Ray. I've really enjoyed having you. Hey, I'm looking at the clock. It's 8:47. Can you stick around and answer a few more questions?
Sure.
Yeah. Why don't let's go ahead and Tony, I think why don't we go ahead and end the recording in a moment. But before we do that, I just want to thank Ray for coming out and speaking to us again. I mean, he was here last year, and it was such a pleasure to have you back.
Thanks. That was fun.